A dynamic conversation on the insights and strategies to building a 5G enabled future. Keith Liu, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Razi. Let's hope it's dynamic for sure. Hi, everybody. Gentlemen, really pleasure to meet all of you. And it's fantastic to see all of you here today as well. You know, I feel that this is the best session out of the 4 rooms that you could have chosen. You came to the right room. So give yourself an applause for coming to the right room. Right, so how many of you actually, you probably from, some of you are local, some of you are overseas, so asking this question, how many of you are actually on a 5G mobile plan right now? Hands up. Wow, that's a lot, right? Oh, you guys too? I'm kidding. So that's fantastic. So all of you definitely good interest and willing to pay for it, which is obviously very good. I do want to actually kick off this discussion. I mean, this is the enterprise track, so we are really here to understand how building out a 5G network and how actually, for private enterprises, for businesses, how would it really benefit businesses in that way? Because a lot of people, when they think about 5G, they think about, oh, my phone offers that, or my operator offers that, and from a consumer standpoint, that's a whole different kind of ball game. But on the for this first question, I mean, Dr. Zaki, let me ask you, would you agree that at this point in time, 5G hasn't really arrived in Malaysia and it's still in a transition, so to speak? Yeah, just yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Very nice to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. 5G is here, we hope. We work for a special purpose vehicle, Digital National Berhad. Malaysia was one of the slow adopters to launch 5G, but the mandate from government in establishing this SPV, which we hope will go back to the private sector soon, is to accelerate rollout of 5G. So happy to say that since we launched 5G services in December 2021, by the end of this year, we will have 80%, God willing. At the moment, we are near 80% coverage of populated areas. So it is definitely here. We are working, of course, we are a wholesale network provider. We are working with our customers, the telcos, to work with them on enhancing adoption at the consumer level and work with telcos on enhancing adoption at the enterprise level. Consumer adoption right now is about 7%, as over 7%.
7%.
About 2.5 million 5G subscriptions right now in Malaysia. That's end of August. And that's very good because most of the telcos signed up access in November last year, started offering services then. So in less than a year, it's 2.5 million. I think in other developed countries, adoption took a while. I remember Singapore and Australia took the first year was 3%.
Right.
So we're doing really well.
That's fantastic. In that sense, though, 7% still some ways to go. In terms of consumer acceptance, though, maybe Pedro, I can ask you in terms of consumer acceptance, where do you see 5G currently for Malaysia?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. Pleasure being here. So I think 5G is here already, right? So we have quite an extensive coverage, getting to 80%, like Dr. was mentioning. But I think coverage is just the start of 5G. So coverage gives us the promise of the bandwidth, but the richness of 5G, in our opinion at CelcomDigi, goes way beyond coverage and the faster download of Netflix or YouTube, right? Everybody is happy with the throughput of the phone and the network, even for entertainment, right? So what we are really excited about 5G is the enterprise use cases, which I think we'll further discuss in the panel. And the enterprise use cases will leverage on the other 2 vectors of the 5G. So one is bandwidth, But the other two interesting ones are the massive number of devices that we can connect
Mhm.
to a cell, and this is clearly an enterprise.
So that's
use
capacity
case.
you're talking about.
That's capacity to connect devices, right? That
Yes.
goes way beyond the 4G.
Yeah.
And the third one, also very, very interesting, is the low latency that will enable things like autonomous guided vehicles, drones, and all of that. And I think we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit about those use cases. And on top of these, we have a very high secure network because of all the mobile protocols are much secure than any other LAN protocols. And also very interesting is the flexibility of this new technology that can be a game changer. So the fact that we can define an end-to-end SLA for a customer, a location, or even a use case or application, this will enable some revolution in terms of the way customers will automate their processes,
Right.
the production lines, the way they will increase their competitiveness, the way they will increase productivity as well. And Malaysia being in the crossroads of the world trade with the Strait of Malacca, being so logistics, ports, shipping, airport industries are quite heavy on the GDP of Malaysia, and these are some of the industries that will benefit more from 5G.
Right. Just hang on. We will talk about some of those industries. We will talk about some of those use cases. Meantime, I just want to go over to Alexander. I mean, in Armenia, it's in a maybe slightly similar or different path when it comes to 5G. Can you share a bit more?
Yeah, actually, we are. I will say we are. We started very lately. Basically, we just now building the network in Armenia. So licenses have been given only last year. But what comes to applications and the real usage of 5G, I still think we are still have a long way to go there, basically. So if you look to the technology trends, when from 2G there was revolution to 3G because the data was introduced like high-speed data. So 2G was edge, very limited capacity. Then 3G came in, but it was using the similar technology that includes voice and data. Then there was big revolution between 3G and 4G where voice is removed, so it's only pure network, voice over IP, there is no fallback to CSS. And then now it came to from 4G to 5G, and the most of the people, I think they distinguish 5G as faster speeds, as maybe lower latency, but I think the real revolution in 5G is that it gives a lot of flexibility to network slicing and the way operators can configure the networks for different enterprises having their own private networks and many multiple networks within the same infrastructure, which is not possible with 4G. So latency is one thing, because with 4G you can also get lower latency when you use higher bands, higher frequency bands, like but with 5G it's even higher bands. But the most, I think, innovation is that it provides this cloud type of infrastructure where you can create different networks and different layers in your network. This means new applications, like for instance companies like Tesla, if they are building car-to-car communication, they are able to install their communication servers under the base stations, create their separate network on the 5G infrastructure, then provide super low latency or ultra low latency, how it's called, service to car communications, which is not possible with 4G. Or if it's possible, but if you do it, there is so many configuration and headache that you would have that it's almost impossible. And with 5G, if you create this one-time infrastructure, then you can provide these different layers of network to different, basically, we can sell future operators. Let's say Tesla has its own network. Now, if we go to applications, there is no, I don't know any real rollout network with that type of slicing of 5G so far, nationwide or citywide. which I think still to come. So if you ask me whether we are building now 5G, do we really have the need of that 5G? My answer would be no.
Right. Still a lot of proof of concept, maybe POCs, I guess, among carriers, even with Celcom-Digi, you guys probably have started running some of those POCs already. But let's talk about. We were talking about trials and talking about experiences. Meranti, Mohandan, the Meranti has got a 5G sort of like experience center going on there. What have you learned from that?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. I think now I get a picture why I'm sitting here at the end of this, since we have all the providers.
And then you have the answer.
I'm representing the users from the old one. Anyway, representing, but I'm not one. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. A bit of background. Meranti is basically a government agency, Malaysian government agency, that focuses on supporting innovators, researchers, as well as startups on leveraging technology. We are helping them to commercialize. We call it from idea to impact. So obviously 5G, we see it as a horizontal technology that supports many different types of industries and technologies when it comes to connectivity. And we see a number of key areas. So what we do is, first of all, we talk to innovators. And I think that many of them are within the enterprise phase, or they're moving into the enterprise phase. And the question comes whether they need 5G in the first place. Right? That always comes as a top question. They want to figure that out.
I ask that every day. Yeah.
Probably for you and me, it's a completely different question.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, for businesses when they're looking at ROI, for innovators when they're building prototypes, low latency come into play, right? At Meranti Park, we've got about 12 kilometers of autonomous vehicle designated road. So we talk to innovators who are building, a lot of different kinds of solutions, utilizing the road. They ask us whether 4G is good enough, right? So how does low latency play a role? We have a number of POCs that we are now working with real innovators to work on, to build a prototype. And the most important thing we see is whether these are commercially viable prototypes. And so these are some of the questions that are being asked. The second one is in terms of the readiness of technology itself. What are the types of solutions out there that can be supported when it comes to 5G? And I guess that's where this gentleman here, three of them, play a crucial role. And I would love to talk a bit about ecosystem building maybe after this.
Yes,
I think that's where Meranti comes into play, because ultimately if you don't take the connector role, then that's going to be difficult for enterprises to really fully benefit from 5G.
Right. So from DNV's standpoint, are you all expecting this adoption by enterprise to spearhead the utilization of this capacity or the spectrum?
Okay, well, consumer adoption is going to be very important still. So we do see consumer adoption, I think, climbing up quite quickly with the support of the MNOs, the telcos. We have a single network at the moment. The government's announced a transition to the dual network, but the single network was built so that there is sharing and reduction of costs, accelerate the rollout, reduction of costs. So we have some of the lowest price 5G plans in the world, not just in this part of the world, in the world.
That's why so many people are using it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's one good advantage. We also have a lot of devices, more than 200 5G devices. I think more than 20 are below 1,000 ringgit.
Yeah. So those came even before 5G.
No, these are 5G enabled phones.
Right.
So it will encourage adoption. But coming back to enterprise adoption now, we see different enterprise adoption rates across the world. In this part, in Europe, for example, there are some good examples and some not so good examples. In the US even. China has done very well. I think we met with China Mobile, for example, and we saw they have 16,000 use cases across the country, and that's a lot of use cases. Some factories are having 5 use cases, 5G use cases. We want to emulate that and bring that to Malaysia. We are working right now, hoping with the enterprises. They will pick their telco. We will work with them. We want to get some of these high-profile cases out. We're going to have a launch of a first private 5G network soon in the next 2 days. and we hope that will be the catalyst to other launches as well.
Wait, repeat that again. You're going to have the first 5G private network launched within the next 2 days.
Yes.
Are there any reporters in here? Do they know this already? Is this something that's news breaking?
So I'm not mentioning which enterprise or which telco.
Okay.
So we hope to see that, but we've been working on that for the last 2 years. We are working with leading enterprises that see value in it. And we think that these can be lighthouses. These can be good examples and role models for other enterprises. And I think what the government's also trying to do is get adoption not only at the high-value industries or high-value enterprises, but also the SMEs. 92% of Malaysian enterprises are SMEs, so we need to cater to that. So Pedro and I was just chatting before this session, and we think that not everyone needs a private network. We could do other means like slicing. It may sound a bit technical, but it allows a dedicated line for you to use.
Yeah,
And
like a lease line. In the broadband terms, like it's a lease line.
dedicated to you with certain SLAs.
Mm-hmm. So then, I mean, in that sense, maybe Pedro, you can take this one. Like, how long? Dato was talking about 2 years to kind of working on it for quite some time to actually get maybe an enterprise over the line to try and roll it out or sign the the procurement document. Like, how long do you expect these sort of like POC process to actually get to at least a point of final rollout?
I think it's quite an interesting question, but I'm an optimist. And what we have seen in the innovation cycles is the cycles are getting shorter and shorter in the new innovations, from idea to POC to mass adoption, right? And we have seen TV took decades, the mobile phone took a few years, the social networks took even less, right? So I think once we start to have these publicly available use cases where telcos, DNB, reference customers start going out there and say, I'm really taking value out of my 5G investment, either private network or hybrid networks with this slicing. As we have more innovators coming to Mirandi and, for example, our experience center as well that we are about to launch, where they can test their innovations, they can test their technologies, this will create a snowball effect. And because companies, it's about their ROI, it's about competitiveness. Once they understand that this is a powerful tool in their automation, in their digitalization journey, they will come quite quickly in terms of adoption. Also, I think Malaysia is quite an innovative country, right? So the leapfrog that has been occurring in terms of industrial development, logistics development, technology development in the country is quite amazing, right? That has sustained a high single-digit growth in the GDP for the last 20 plus years. So I think with this innovation capability and the vibrant enterprising community, we will see maybe not taking 2 years to have many more interesting use cases in 5G.
Right. Do you see a lot of requests though for these sort of projects at this point in time, or conversely, what are you guys doing? What is Digi doing to actually promote this availability to enterprises?
Okay. So we have a large sales force, right? Some of them are here in the room, and they are quite excited about the 5G opportunity. And they have been doing the evangelist part in a lot of these verticals that for us are clear-cut. Utilities, ports, airports, oil and gas, smart manufacturing, healthcare, and so on. So we have a huge pipeline of opportunities where both for private 5G and also for the hybrid cases, which we are working closely with DNB to make it happen, right? Because it's not just from the MNO's point of view, it's also DNB as the wholesale network. We need to guarantee that experience end to end. And we have weekly meetings on product development. So there's still some components that are missing for the hybrid. And so the pipeline is there, the excitement is there, and I think it's going to happen in an accelerated way.
Right. Is that the same story with Team Telecom Armenia? Is that do you see requests for sort of like solutions, and at the same time, working on those solutions moving forward?
I think from that sense, I think we all should be at the same place, because if this type of innovations will come, it will come worldwide, because usually it's being developed with companies like, for instance, Meta just introduced glasses, right? Smart glasses.
So yeah, Quest 3.
Yeah, it includes, I don't know, for instance, the camera, then it uses AI to recognize the video, and most probably this type of applications will be doing processing in the cloud. So if you are doing processing in the cloud, then if you have a distributed cloud which is close to the edge, close to the base station, you can do it very fast. So let's assume there is many users, then the network will become issue if you do it in central cloud of Meta. But if you have a distributed network where you do multiple devices processing on the base station, then the latency plus the overall occupancy of the network goes down, because you do everything on the last edge. And the same is for machine-to-machine communication. So if you have a sliced network in 5G and you have two cars under the same base station, they don't need to travel the network for the signal and then go back. They just communicate under the same cell.
Yeah.
Then it's applications which, if you don't have 5G enabled cloud infrastructure, then these cars, for instance, will not be able to operate in your country if the application is there. So that's why 5G is, in some senses, will be not just the technology to enable just faster speeds, etc. It's just to enable usages. So there is consumer devices, including cars, future that will be connected this way, that will be impossible to use that specific feature in the country which don't have 5G enabled.
Right. But of course, I mean,
but I think we have years to come. It's not
exactly. I mean,
months.
I'm asking, like, when you talk about self-driving cars, for example, it almost feels too science fiction, because
not self-driving only, even
right.
from security point, like collusion or something that
right.
maybe you are driving, but the
right.
cars can communicate. But anyway, yeah, I don't think it's something in next month.
Let me just intervene here. Maybe it's a little bit far-fetched, like you mentioned, into the future, the self-driving cars in the public roads. But this is happening in private spaces. In factory floors, a lot of factory floors are having AGVs to move components of production from warehouses to the production line.
Yes, exactly.
We have that as well in some of our logistics hubs in Malaysia, and I think again the adoption will be exponential, because when in private environments it's easier because of regulation, it's easier because it's a more controlled environment, and you have less risk factors, let's say, right? But you see these in small AGVs, you see these in trucks and self-guided vehicles. So this is happening in private environments.
And I actually want to also, Mohammed, will come to you in a short while, but let me just follow up on this one as well. In a lot of these private environments, and I can tell from personal experience as well, where factories are not able to get a proper signal just from the macro network, because maybe the factories have, they're too large, or they're too far away, or they've got like metal sheeting and plating, all over. Is 5G, private 5G network, that's going to help, obviously?
I think you need to give us the contacts of those companies, because we'll solve the issue for them quite easily, right? So, and the answer is what you mentioned. So if they don't have a public 5G, first of all, DNB can make it happen, that's number one, but some of them have high demanding requirements in terms of either bandwidth or security or latency, where the private 5G network is really the solution for them. And in Malaysia, we are able today to enable those kind of use cases, even the highest demanding ones in those challenging environments where you were describing.
Right. Mohanan, with some of the tests and the trials that have been going on though, which ones are pretty exciting, you think, and has a big potential for the future?
Well, I don't think we're ready to put any bets yet for now, because we're seeing it across the board. As you were talking about it, it's very much still on the adoption and impact. But we do see some of the key things we're working on. For example, at Merathi, we have the Center of Drone, COE for Drone, which we are building. It's about 5 acres of land, end-to-end, in terms of design of drone, right up to commercializing, helping the innovators. We see a lot of interest. I think that's obviously for security, for connectivity, low latency, from the innovators who would want to adopt. We have agri-tech, agriculture, where we require vast space, right? And also to have the right connectivity. We're seeing quite a bit of interest as well from startups who are doing pretty well, now wanting to have that low latency so that they have more real-time data coming in. And the third one is, of course, autonomous vehicle that we talked about just now. The beautiful thing about the park, Merathi Park, 686 acres, basically is a plug-and-play environment for the innovators. So this is where they get a chance to come and have a real feel in terms of the work that they can do. And I think that's a crucial part we are seeing. Aside from that, we've got other focus areas we're working on. For example, an integrated healthcare hub, which is coming up as well. There's quite a bit of interest in Malaysia. I would say after manufacturing, at least from our views from innovators, we are seeing that healthcare is coming very strongly, and after that maybe logistics. So these are some of the things that are already happening in the park. Maybe we may not see it outside, but we're seeing innovators already playing around with it, right? And I think it's just a matter of time where some of this will get into the actual ecosystem.
What are the challenges, and I'll ask you that also, what are the challenges to actually, like now, you say they're playing around with it, like are there other factors that need to come into play before these projects become real?
Oh, very good question. So sometimes we only look at it from the provider versus users, right? We tend to not look at the entire ecosystem. So since Merathi's job as a government agency is actually to bring everyone together, we see this as a crucial component. There are multiple elements within this that need to be looked into. For example, the researchers themselves, the research institution, what are the key core areas they're looking at? Second is talent. What are the type of talent that's coming out? Third is regulators, government, right? What are their roles? How are they supporting? How can they reduce the barrier of entry when it comes to innovators looking at this? And the other parts will be the funding, and then comes the usage, the corporates as well. So at Merathi, we try to look at this. About somewhere early this year, we invited about 20 key stakeholders, including the MNOs, regulators, DNB, users, as well as startups. And we wanted to understand from a 5G adoption, enterprise adoption, what would be the key challenges that we should be aware of? And where as innovators, you need to, sort of be supported. Key things that came out of it, number one is in lack of use cases. So that was very interesting. Globally, we have many different use cases from many different
We have to
industries.
list out all those 16,000 use cases, man, and just give it to them.
Absolutely, but when you bring it down to Malaysian, at a Malaysian perspective, businesses tend to want to understand the ROI. The environment is different, right? It's not a level playing field. That came out very strongly. The second one was actually in terms of government support. I think from regulators, understanding the do's and don'ts.
Companies
Yeah?
always want government support. They always want money all the time, right? All the time. Right? You all agree? Yes? Okay. That's a perennial question, like whatever technology.
Absolutely. Funds make sense. Funds utilized can maximize, right? Especially for enterprises who are looking at venturing into new businesses or new areas of technology adoption. Definitely, I think it's definitely useful. But also in terms of other support, the things that DNB are doing, for example, right? Bringing in different solutions, getting local players to come into play in terms of providing those solutions are crucial. one of the biggest challenge for manufacturers today, for example, yeah, they understand there are players, there are MNOs who can provide the connectivity, but who is actually providing those last mile in terms of SI work, you know, in terms of connecting what I have today.
System integrators, for those of you who don't know what
System
SI is,
integrators,
system
yeah.
integrators.
And
People who actually put the wires from point A to point B, right? You're talking
Yeah.
about those things.
So when you're looking at the costs of adopting 5G for businesses, these are really important matters to discuss.
Yes, SI contracts, not cheap. Right.
Absolutely.
That's what do you think?
No, I just wanted to add. Okay, so we are at the nascent stage. First 5G network was in 2019 in Korea. It's now just 3 years plus. We have in globally about 30% coverage, 5G coverage, 260 networks. A lot of it is going to be, a lot of it is people need to look, touch and feel.
Yeah.
So for DNB as a single wholesale network set up by government, we have an experience center that we hope to launch very soon.
Oh, great.
Very large experience center. Will complement also what Maranti has. But we have 50 plus use cases that they come and your different verticals, really different industries. Sorry, I'm talking like a telco person, so I'll say verticals, but different industries can come in and have a look. Okay, healthcare, this is what is available. And the use cases that we have in DNB's Experience Center are use cases that are already available, supply here, certified, we will recommend them. So they're not looking at something that's in the future or somewhere else. So that's very important, and as in all the countries I've been to also that talk about this, they do need to see it. They need to, so POCs are still going to be important for some. I think MNOs are working very hard. They have a long list of clients that they can also upgrade from 4G into 5G. So those are some of the things that we can do to help speed up adoption at the enterprise level.
Right. Pedro, are you all working towards like providing those examples? And I think I like what you talked about hybrid, because as a kind of like there's already something like a lot of companies are already using 4G for some of their applications. So now it's just kind of upgrading it, right?
True. When I mean hybrid is not a public network, but it's not fully private network. So it's what we call hybrid is oftentimes the slicing that we need to do, some of the assets that we need to pull from our core and put on the customer premises in order to ensure the low latency, like edge computing, for example. But I would like to pick up on one of your points about the spending and the price and the cost, right?
Cost, yeah. And importantly, the ROI, return on investment, right? Yeah.
But I think that's the point, right? For a businessman, for a business of all sizes, I think, of course, access to finance is easier in a large company than an SME. But putting that aside, I don't think that the cost is the driver, is the ROI. So if it costs $1 million ringgit or 100 million ringgit, but if they get the return on investment on a reasonable period of time, then it's a no-brainer to do that investment. And I believe we need to do a better job as stakeholders in this industry to educate more and to communicate better what are the relevant use cases for each of these key industries in Malaysia economy, in order for them to understand that if they implement and they invest in 5G, not just the infrastructure, because that's oftentimes on our backs from MNOs, DNB, but on the use cases that will automate their processes, that will do the digital transformation, regardless if it is a service company or a hardcore manufacturing house. So it's all about how do we communicate and how do we adapt and configure that use case in order for them to have the fastest and the highest return on investment.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So quick question then for the two of you. I mean, perhaps Alexander, you can say, like, what sort of communication are you all doing, like, as you all are rolling this out, to private sector in that sense?
Yeah, I think that will be good also to know, to learn from colleagues here, the 50 cases that you mentioned, are these the cases that is not possible to do with 4G? Because there are many cases that, okay, they are coming saying it's 5G enabled case, but it's the same whether it's working on 4G or 5G, there is no big difference.
It's a really good point.
There are very, very few cases that really need 5G, low latency or edge computing in order to operate, so, or to operate efficiently. So now the question, the key question.
I like him a lot. He's playing the devil's advocate. Really good.
Because I'm also shareholder in my telco, so we spend this money for 5G rollout. Now we need to understand whether there is return in use cases or not. And this is our understanding, that we don't need to build 5G networks unless the other two competitors are building, and we need to do marketing to sell the 5G for 5G enabled phones. But if we talk about the technology and the benefit it gives to end user in terms of usage, I think we're still not there.
Right. But you are marketing it though still at the same time? You're saying that this is important?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
we are now launching the 5G network. We are investing into this, and I would say the 90, maybe 9% of this decision was for marketing purposes only.
Right.
I
Please,
need, I need to dispute a
You
little
may
bit.
disagree. A little bit.
No, I agree partially, because if we look from a customer perspective, an end user, me, you, Kate, on this, we don't need a faster phone, right? So our
Wait. You're not a TikTok user, obviously.
Well, even if I am, but
I'm kidding.
But the question is, I think we are all reasonably happy with the throughput of the 4G network, and probably the use cases for the consumer segment are quite nascent at best, right? So it will probably be about entertainment, some gaming, some AR, VR.
Yes.
That even in Korea, they have a lot of, that is quite advanced, they have a lot of use cases, but they are not monetizing it. So
Yeah.
that's challenging for operators that invest in a 5G network, extensive coverage, and then the willingness to pay might not be there from the consumer segment. But fortunately enough, I think we are in a panel of enterprise. And in enterprise, a lot of the use cases demand 5G private networks. So let me just give an example of something that is quite relevant in Malaysia. So let's imagine a large port, right? Ports is all about how fast you can turn over the chip. So how fast can you load and unload containers, and to do this, the more you automate, the more competitive your port is, because the lowest your cost that you can reflect in your tariffs to your customers that are the ships, right? The
Right.
ship owners. So without 5G, you cannot automate the cranes. Without 5G, you cannot have autonomous trucks to move the train, the
crates,
containers,
yeah. Containers, yeah.
in the trucks, right? So, and when you automate this, suddenly you don't need 5 crane operators. You need 1, and you transform a 5 blue-collar job into a 1 white-collar job, because someone in the control room with a joystick will control 5 cranes. And for this you need 5G, because you need a lot of cameras, you need a lot of sensors, you need the latency, because a microsecond can damage the container, and that is a liability on you if you are a port operator, right? And this is just an example that touches productivity, touches ROI, but definitely needs 5G because of the latency, of the amount of data we need to collect to make it happen, because it's a lot of video-based feeds that are sensitive to 2 parts, latency and need very high bandwidths. There's no way we can cope with 4G. We can disclose the customers where we do this, but 4G cannot cope with the amount of data and
So
with
there
the
are
latency.
clear limitations with what we
Real
have right now.
limitations, right?
Yeah.
And this is just one use case, right? If we go to oil and gas, if we go to smart manufacturing, if we go to logistics, there are many use cases that will demand 5G. And the ones that, in our view, have the highest ROI, those are related to all of these AI, all of these robotics and automation that demand the 5G characteristics that we have spoken about.
Right, I
On
understand.
top of it, the security.
Yeah, I think security of course is clearly another important aspect. But just coming back to you on the like the rollout and the sort of like accessibility. Will we see better accessibility for, you know, I would say the underserved markets? Is 5G the answer?
No, it's a combination of all technologies, really. I can't imagine that 5G will solve everything. But what has happened in Malaysia is that we've been asked to roll out on a supply-led basis, so we go and roll out first. So funding has to be consistent with that. We will have to borrow first, roll it out. It's a supply-led, it's a cost recovery, so that only a cost recovery basis, DNB makes no profit. And so what is this intended to do is to accelerate rollout. That's why you can do 5G rollout to 80% in just over 2 years. It took, based on the stats that I have, took about 7-8 years for 4G to get to 80%.
Right.
And now, of course, with Jendela and other programs, we're going to 98% now to the country. In Sarawak also, you can see that they are not pushing it to what the Premier said, 99%.
That's right.
But so the important thing is to roll out as fast as possible. I think we see value in it. We are a trading nation. Our trade is larger than a lot of countries, and so we do depend on very very high connectivity. We want to invite investments. So when people want to look at investing in Malaysia, they look at, of course, labor. They look at the infrastructure, but infrastructure includes connectivity.
Yeah.
They look at incentives and so on. So I think connectivity has been earmarked as very important. It's always been important to Malaysia since the days of the multimedia super corridor, 26 years ago. So IT and connectivity is very important to the country. So digital divide will always be a problem, but I think we have the means to solve that with various technologies.
Okay. I'd like to, well, we've got about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes. I'd like to invite any of the, the attendees here, participants, to ask a question. There should be a microphone coming to you. Is there a microphone? Oh, there we go. I think the gentleman over here. If you could share your name and where you're from, please. Yeah.
Hi, nice to see you here from Singapore to Sarawak and Sarawak, Singapore. I'm from Singapore. We're actually a SI. Like you say, SI is a system integrator. We do anything that needs a wire to connect. You can look for us. We have offices in Semenyo in Singapore. Just selling a bit. But I got a little bit of doubt about 5G in terms of radiation and sustainability, because I do sustainability and climate change projects. So, of course, I shared the same mantra as you guys. You know, if you don't have a on your forehead, let's just be friends and eat Sarawak laksa. But the question is, I understand 5G in nature has very high radiation. That's one. And second thing, and most importantly, is really the ROI is pretty questionable in terms of the energy consumption of it, the running of it, the infra investment of it. So how do we address these two critical, shall I say, negative point about it?
Thank you for this question. The sustainability room, I think, is in the other room. Oh, just kidding. No. It's a good question, right? The cost, I would say, the inherent sustainability cost and also the ROI.
Maybe I'll start and then I'll pass on Pedro about ROI and so on. But on radiation, I don't quite understand. You're talking about EMF radiation? Yeah, I think there's a lot of concerns. Every new generation of technology. People have said before this was 4G, now it's 5G. I think we have a center in Malaysia, an MCMC, that does research on this. We have university does research on this. There are 32,000 research papers at the WHO, World Health Organization, on EMF radiation, and it has been completely denied that there is any health impact. None. Yeah, so but I do meet a lot of academics in Malaysia who feel otherwise. I don't know what they've read, but I think having, if you do go to the World Health Organization, you do talk.
Is there some TikTok going around talking about that?
There was a YouTube video about cooking a fried egg with EMF, and it's completely fake. It's been going on for the last 12 years, I think. So you can't fry an egg with EMF. It doesn't work. So it's got less radiation than a lot. I mean, there's no health impact really. So and in terms of energy, in the equipment that we see, for all, you name it, all the equipment providers, there's been massive leaps in terms of less usage versus 4G, for example. So sustainability is an important cornerstone of all equipment manufacturers, whether Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, and you name it. So we're encouraged. I remember when there was a parliamentary question we had to prepare for about energy consumption. Questions are asked again, did you get the numbers right? Is it this low compared to 4G? It is very much lower. So I think on that, and that's...
This is at Parliament.
Yeah.
So even at Parliament, they watch the same YouTube video, you're saying?
No, there are concerns about the amount of usage. So I think a lot in the world are also, 5G costs about 2.5 times more in terms of rollout than 4G. Equipment costs, you've got a higher bandwidth, so you've got to have closer towers and so on. So a lot of network sharing is happening across the world. DNB is sharing between the 5 telcos in Malaysia, but you see network sharing all over because you have to reduce costs. You've got to make it accessible. You've got to, get adoption up. Connectivity is no longer a nice to have.
Yeah,
it's a must have.
It's a must have.
So
and I have to say, I have to congratulate DNB for actually finally getting all of them to sign up. Can we all give them a hand? It's been a long journey, right? It's been a tough journey. It's not been easy. There you go.
Thank you.
I don't have, after this, I don't have anything to add, right? just maybe one topic which, and of course I'm not the best person to talk about radiation. I'm not a doctor and I'm not an engineer. But I've worked in this industry for almost 30 years, and since the 2G, that spectacle of radiation is always there, right? And every time there's a new technology, being it a mobile technology or a microwave technology, there's always those concerns, right? But in the end, I think we all live longer as generations pass. So
right. So sustainability, then you're probably, what I'm hearing is that it's maybe more myth than fact at this point in time, or maybe there's still some degree of debate. What about do you get those questions?
I think I'm coming back to what I was saying from the beginning, the use cases. So you have investments, you do the rollout, whether it's lower consumption per megabyte usage because it has high bandwidth, similar consumption, let's say, so per megabyte, yes, it's low, but as base station, it has similar consumption. I think colleagues will agree, but per usage, per, I don't know, speed, it's much lower consumption based on the fact sheets of the data sheets of the equipment. The frequencies are going higher, so now the new 5G networks can operate in 6 gigahertz, 3.5 gigahertz, so it's higher frequency, which means concentrated wavelength, let's put it this way. Again, I'm not doctor to say whether the impact of it is, as colleagues said, I agree that there are numerous reports that there is no impact on health. So on that point, if we don't elaborate there, overall the sustainability, the usage, investment, and then the usage on the real applications, I think still we are not there, but I agree with colleagues, we are going there. So if you are not building 5G enabled infrastructure now, then there will be someday then you should ramp up or catch up, because anyway, technologies and the way we see the technologies are developing, we see really that there will be huge demand on this low latency, ultra low latency, or cloud-based, edge-based processing power that will be needed for many, many applications. So anyway, we have to build 5G. What I'm trying to say we are not ready is that when you design your 5G infrastructure in the specific country, you should be very much forward-looking the way, because there are different configurations of 5G networks when you talk to vendors, so they can sell you something which totally make no sense in the future, basically. It has 5G radio, but in order to have the benefits of the real 5G, you need to have totally different architecture. And after 2 years, when you have to implement this because new applications came into life, then they will sell you another piece of equipment which has nothing to do what you bought, basically. So that's, I think, what operators should have in mind on building the network right. So they really claim that they have 5G enabled infrastructure that can support applications in future.
Right, future looking. Ensure that the whatever you're investing in has ability to actually move forward. Yeah. Do you have anything to add? Otherwise, I'll throw up to another question.
Definitely not another doctor. But I think maybe just to add on a little bit more when it comes to sustainability, I think we should look at it holistically. I mean, people have said if you wear a goggle and if you can actually see the radiation now in this room, you probably wouldn't want to be here. You probably would just sitting on your house. So striking a balance from an ESG standpoint makes a lot of sense. That's one. Second is, I agree with the panelists, digital transformation is a way forward. So it's not just how you adopt, also how do you manage. The third is like Malaysia, our digital economy contribution is more than 20%. That's moving at a accelerated pace. So it's already happening. So we need to figure out how to manage this, and also to see that this can bring greater good to everyone.
Right. Any other questions? Yes, we have a gentleman in the front.
Hello.
Is the microphone on? It's on. You can just speak to it.
Testing. Oh, yeah. I'm Ju. I'm met in Kuching. I understand when you talk about the budget and things like more on MNO as a user of 5G. I have this statement this morning when the Premier said the SMI, SME in Sarawak will be challenging because there's a lot of uncertainty in the future. Followed by Mark to talk about this AI, ChatGPT, and so reflecting to our friend here, we're going to do budgeting. So now, besides other things, do we budget for AI and ChatGPT into the bucket of SI solution or whatever? So what about 5G? Which bucket and where are the guiding principles? Kind of stuff. Is that a question? I believe.
Yeah, I believe what you're trying to ask is like how do you budget for it? I guess in your technology investments, maybe in your coming year, and in terms of like how much to budget. Actually, I guess the more difficult question is how much.
Sorry, if I can add, it's just like because it's talk about 5G, traditional 2G, 3G, just good utilities. So if 5G is a private network, it could be a different perspective when you talk to your CFO, things like that.
Nothing is easy when you talk to your CFO. Okay, please.
Okay, let me. I would split these into two types of companies. The large companies that will have strong use cases through automation or digital transformation. My advice to them is, yes, you should start budgeting now for your 5G setup. and this is not probably a 2024 budget, but my recommendation is look at it as at least a 3-year budget, because once you get into the first use case, then you will expand to other use cases. And of course, this depends on the industry. I don't know which industry is your company operating in. In a SME, it's more challenging, because unless you operate a highly automated factory, then 5G is a huge opportunity for you. Why? Because the old Henry Ford production line, where the car or any object would be assembled, would move along the production of the assembly line, and people, and now robots, would input the different components, is being transformed, is being disrupted. So this is a very rigid setup. So even SMEs that have a production line kind of business model, they should look at the opportunities of adopting a very flexible factory floor, where the good is built in one place and the AGVs and the robots are the ones moving towards that goal. This gives flexibility, this enables for bespoke products that are very difficult to do in a conventional, traditional production line setup. So it really depends on the industry, but also size does matter here, right? Because automation is not yet available to all the companies. So a micro business will struggle to benefit from the digital transformation use cases over 5G, on top of what they have today already from 4G, which is the bandwidth. So I think we will need a lot of more maturity in the use cases, and here our colleagues from the SI ecosystem also have responsibility, because we don't do it alone. So it's not the wholesale operator, it's not the MNO, it's not just the facilitators from the government, it's an ecosystem of partners where SIs and their ability to innovate and to create new use cases are essential components of this. We don't do it alone. But I think in the 5G and overall in the digitalization and automation journey, SMEs need to be part of it. And, but we are still in the early stages. We need more maturity to have a compelling ROI for these companies. But the manufacturing one, I think it's a very, very strong one because of the flexibility, the ability for you to differentiate your products based on specific customer needs. So the bespoke that I was speaking about.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Can you please give our panelists a big round of applause for their insights and